What really is Judaism to you?
I don't consider Judaism to be a religion. I don't think we should talk about there being Jews, Muslims, and Christians, but rather, since we Jews are a people, what's correct is to talk about there being French, Russians, and Jews, because we Jews are a nation. And Judaism is the national system that we, the Jewish people, have developed throughout our history up to this moment and continues to accompany us as an evolving system. That's what Judaism is, and I wouldn't categorize it as a religion, but it does encompass a system of thought as well as culture, and it also includes political and philosophical ideas and everything else. All aspects of Jewish life are considered part of Judaism.
Okay. And this is a question that might seem a bit redundant, but you already told me that the religion, which is not a religion, is a system as you have developed it over time. But what does it mean for someone personally? What does it mean to be Jewish?
So, being Jewish means belonging to a people that has existed for several millennia, which is the Jewish people. And to be Jewish, you must be born to a Jewish mother. That is, if a person's mother is Jewish, the person is Jewish. You can also be Jewish by conversion. But what is a conversion to Judaism? It's an act of joining. That is, a person who joins the Jewish people, which in Hebrew is called ger, meaning foreigner, that person joins the Jewish people and not the Jewish religion. So he is part of this nation called the Jewish people. So, what does it mean to be Jewish? It means being part of this people. And that's why Judaism being the system of the Jew, that's why I believe there is. There should also be, for example, a Japanism for the Japanese, a Frenchism for the French. And in greater detail, since France has regions, for example, the Provence region is very different from the northern region of France. That's why it's different, right? Each Frenchism is different. So I think that's how it should be seen as a national system that accompanies the Jew. And that's why the Jew is related to the Jewish nation and Judaism as well.
Okay. Let's go. So we'll start now with a deeper understanding.
Did you know there are atheist Jews? Were you aware of that?
I get it. I understand what you mean. What happens is that it's just, I'm from Puerto Rico. Here things look very different, and that's what I want. I need it to be specified for it to be specified. That's the thing.
The big novelty of that suddenly after 2000 years people were familiar with the idea of the Jew, because for example the Jew is a how do you say, a character, like a figure that was always there, for example, in the Christian Bible. And the Christian Bible was always this ethos that accompanied Western culture. So people always knew about the existence of a Jew, but it wasn't very clear what a Jew is. Today, after 2000 years of Jews being known around the world, suddenly we have YouTube channels, suddenly we have a microphone. We can express what we truly seek, the truth and Israel's message, without the demonizations placed on the Jew. And that's why your question is very legitimate. What you're saying is absolutely right, that there are people around the world who had never encountered these concepts. And finally, well, Jonathan, you are opening the door for many people to start listening, to hear these concepts they hadn't encountered before.
Yes. That's what I want to tell you. There's a lot of confusion here. There's a lot of confusion. Everyone thinks that everyone who lives in Israel is Jewish, that they all believe the same thing. And really, well, that's not the case. That's something that's not true. By seeing you all, I've understood a lot of those things. I mean, really, not everyone there, not everyone is Jewish, right?
Correct. In Israel, 23% of the Israeli population, we're talking about a quarter, one out of every four people, are Arabs. And that's me kind of making fun of the people who accuse Israel of being an ethno state. Actually, Israel has Arab judges in the Supreme Court, Arabs serve in the IDF, and are involved in politics, so they are part of the population. Additionally, the Israeli population includes Druze and Samaritans, who are distinct ethnicities, right? There are Bedouins, there's a large number of, there are Circassians, I'm not sure how to say it in Spanish. There are other groups, another range of ethnicities of people who are there. There are also Jews. In Israel, of course, I'm talking about the population of 10 million Israelis. In the global Jewish population, there are Jews scattered in every country. Due to our history, Jews were scattered and only began regrouping in modern times in the state of Israel.
Correct. Okay, yes, that's clear to me. That's clear to me. But I want to go back more to the historical line, if I can call it that, instead of calling it religious, and to look for what it means to you. Because remember, we have a meaning for certain characters in the Bible. And obviously, for example, what role does Abraham play within Judaism?
Abraham is the father of our nation. We call him Avraham Avinu, Avraham, our father. And I understand that in the West, he is considered the father of faith. But we Jews consider him our father, the father of the tribe. That is, if we are Israelites, why are we called Israelites? Because we are the children of Israel. That's where the term comes from. Who was Israel? Yaakov. He had two names. Jacob is one of the characters in the Bible. He had the name Israel, Yaakov. Who was Yaakov's father? Yitzhak. And Yitzhak's father, Abraham. So the children of Israel are Abraham's descendants. So we consider him rather the founder of the Hebrew nation, because although there were already Hebrews after Abraham, that is the Hebrew nation, which later became the nation of Israel, and today the Jews. So we consider him more as a national father, since obviously he was the one who showed a revolutionary side of what monotheism is. What is monotheism? The belief in one God. However, we believe that the belief in monotheism already existed. It was already there before Abraham. So what Abraham does is rather bring the idea to the world and make monotheism more widely known. Even though it already existed, it was kind of set aside, forgotten, it was minimized. Abraham's purpose is to spread it worldwide.
Okay. And so by spreading it throughout the world, by spreading it around the world, eh, how can a person who is not Jewish, aside from what you already explained to me, that one becomes Jewish by descent from the mother, right? How could a person become Jewish? It's possible.
Yes. So, and this fits perfectly with the time we're in, because in a couple of days, there's a Jewish holiday we celebrate called Shavuot. Shavuot, when we have a tradition of reading what's called the Book of Ruth. Who was Ruth? Ruth was King David's great grandmother. And Ruth was not Jewish, she was a Moabite. You're invited to read the book of Ruth about how she came from Moab, a people who were not Israelites or Jewish. But Ruth decides to become part of the people of Israel. She says to Naomi, "Your God will be my God, your people will be my people." That is to say, she takes on the national identity and from there adopts the ideology of Israel. So Ruth is a person who joins the Jewish people, and from her, the chain of people who will be the ancestors of King David, and King David himself begins. And from King David will come the Messiah. It means that converting to Judaism is a process in which a person who was not Jewish joins the Jewish people. It is a process that obviously includes the ideological part, or as they call it, the spiritual part, as well as knowledge about how to follow the laws of the people of Israel, what we call halakha or Jewish law. And after a whole process that the person has internalized and has truly understood that they want to follow this path, that person is accepted by the people of Israel and joins the people of Israel. That is what this conversion to Judaism is.
Okay, okay. So you, since this is a question, I assume the answer should be yes. But you as a Jew, do you recommend that people learn about Judaism and consider whether it suits them and possibly join that religion? Or what do you think about people who stay in other religions? I'd like to know what you think about that.
Great question, as this often surprises people about Judaism. In Judaism, our goal as Jews, or at least according to our prophets, is that one of the objectives of our nation is for God's name to be known throughout the world. But on the other hand, Jews are not proselytizers. And this comes as a shock to many people. That is, not being proselytizers means that we do not try to get people to become Jews. We don't go around evangelizing or Hebraising people, Judaizing, however you want to say it. We don't try to get people to convert to Judaism. In fact, conversions to Judaism are difficult. Unlike, for example, in Islam, where it's enough to say a phrase, which is the Shahada, and the person becomes Muslim. In Christianity, it depends on the denomination, but usually an immersion is enough, and the person is considered to have this new birth and is now a Christian. In Judaism, it's very complicated. There, people get turned away. There are many more obstacles, but why? We don't think everyone needs to be Jewish. There's no ideal in being Jewish. What is ideal is being a good person and following what are called the Noahide laws, which are laws for humanity, universal laws. But a person can be Japanese and be a very good person and transform humanity and make a better world in Japan. And why do I say this? Because if the goal is for the world to be good, and how many Jews are there in the world, Jonathan? We are about 0.2% of humanity. We are very few. How is it possible that so few Jews can transform the whole world? The only way is, as the prophet said, when the nations of the world are in synergy with Israel. When the nations of the world say, "We want to learn your ways from the God of Jacob," that is, the God of Israel, and follow these guidelines set by the Torah. And so the nations of the world are the ones who transform the world. Because think about it. Where are you? In which country?
Puerto Rico.
In Puerto Rico. Because how could we Jews change the social, economic, and political reality of Puerto Rico? The people in Puerto Rico are the ones who change that reality and deal with whatever problems may arise there. Not us, it's you. And that's why the ideal is that you, the people who are not Jews, are the ones who transform the world. And that's why it is said, Israel, light of the nations. What does that mean? That Israel is a tool, a light, a lantern. For whom? For the nations. The nations are the ones who truly do the work. And what they do is take the light, this lamp or lantern, shine it where they need to aim, and that's where they go. But the ones who transform the world are the nations. Israel is like those who give, like a heart that beats and sends blood to the organs. There are other organs. There can't be a body without a brain. That is, without Puerto Rico and without a kidney, without Japan. I often mention Japan as an example, since it shows we're discussing a specific people and their geographic location. That's why we don't think people should convert to Judaism, but they should know what the message of Judaism is. That is important. Yes, yes.
Yes, 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 yes. No, no, no. I understood perfectly. I mean, the world can function, everyone can go their own way, but trying to do things right. Exactly. It's not that hard.
In fact, I think the most destructive ideologies are those that have tried to be imposed on other cultures. Ideological expansionism that tries to homogenize humanity, religions that have tried to, and that's the pinnacle of intolerance for me. Thinking that the other person is wrong, and since my religion is true, my culture is the true one, I'm going to impose my culture and my religion on them. And that's how all the conflicts we know start. Yes, there are three reasons why conflicts happen: territory, religion, and economy. And this is one of the factors that has most fueled conflict. And that's why what the Jewish people understand is that every nation is important. And what we do is not try to make other nations like us, but rather the opposite, that nations become the best version of themselves and that they fulfill, of course, a series of parameters which are the Noahide laws. And from them, they manage to create better societies. But it's exactly as you are saying. The goal is not to impose, but for each person to enhance their own potential.
It's not that. When you think about it, to a certain extent, you distort each person's nature when you try to impose things from another country. Exactly. I mean, I had never seen it the way you just explained it.
That's why, connecting everything we've said, Abraham, the father of our nation, what is the promise that God gives him? I go to Genesis 12. I will make you into a great nation. And what will happen next? And in you, all the religions of the earth will be blessed. It doesn't say that. The countries of the earth, the nationalisms of the earth, no. In you, all the families of the earth will be blessed. Why does the Torah say families of the earth and not countries of the earth or religions of the earth? Because families are the basic building blocks of the world that don't have nationalisms or ideologies. They aren't contaminated by those garments. Because, for example, a person today in Japan or in Puerto Rico, they can put on a garment called, I don't know, Marxism, and they put it on, and the next day they take it off and put on another garment called Buddhism, and the next day they put it on and put on another one called Pastafarianism, and it doesn't matter. But the Japanese person will continue to be themselves, their culture, their family, the ancient roots that are, let's say, ingrained in their essence. That can never be taken away. That's where Judaism gets to the root of who a person is and not at the garment. It's important for each nation to develop the garment in the best possible way. That's why we're not proselytizers, but we want people to know they don't need to impose on others, and we won't impose on them.
Yes, 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 yes. Amazing, amazing. I love that vision, Yako, really, because many times in these religious debates here, and that's practically why I get into this, because I say, how is it possible that they can't have a dialogue? How can they not have a dialogue when in reality there's a God who supposedly wants good for everyone? How can we not communicate or understand each other? With the internet, you're in Israel, I'm in Puerto Rico, and we can talk and understand each other easily. But when it comes to imposition and saying that you're wrong and I'm right, that's where the problem is. And that's what I've seen a lot on social media. And you mentioned something just now, and it was the Torah. And I think that obviously, among what are the sacred books for you, the Torah, the Tanakh, and the Talmud is another book as well.
Yes, that's correct. It's not a single book, it's a set of books, volumes that make up what is called the Talmud.
Well, I think that many times with all the confusion that exists in these countries here in the West, so to speak, it often happens because of a lack of knowledge, because people don't want to get into it, look for it, or try to understand it. We simply stick with the translation of the Bible that we have, and we don't want to confront it. We don't want to confront it. We just want to stay boxed into the way we think. And I'd like this to be more of an overview, not to go too deep. What do those books represent for you? What do those three books really mean to you?
Okay, I'm going to answer and also get to the point where you started that statement. The Torah is the most important book, but it's not just a book. There's the written Torah, which is known as the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible. But there's something called the oral Torah. We believe that at Sinai, the oral Torah was given, let's say, compiled or explained, but the oral Torah existed before everything. It's something that has been transmitted since creation. That's how many people in Judaism see it. And then to codify the ideas of the Torah was written, now the written Torah, but the oral Torah. It's this compendium of things that continue to be explained from generation to generation, which is the Midrash, which are deeper explanations of what the text means. Because, for example, it says that God created Adam from the dust of the earth and breathed the spirit into him. What does that mean? What is dust of the earth? What is spirit? What is it? So, what explains this is the oral Torah, the content of what these kinds of codes or phrases mean. That's the oral Torah. And the oral Torah was codified in some books called the Talmud, which in fact is that wall of books you see behind me. This whole set is the Talmud. It's a series of dialogues between rabbis, between sages of Israel, where they not only have conversations, but also debate and discuss about how the Torah is applied, how the rules of the Torah are put into practice, and that's what the oral Torah is. The oral Torah is the tradition passed down orally and later recorded by Israel's sages in the Talmud. And that's why we still study it to this day. Now, to the point you're making about how it's possible that there are people who can't talk about topics related to what people call religion. It's a highly charged topic, especially politics. How does this differ for Jews? Anyone who has taken a look at the Talmud knows that the Talmud is not a narrative text like reading Harry Potter. It's a text of debates. It's a text of so and so says, like Rabbi so and so says one opinion, but Rabbi so and so says no. Why does he say this? And he explains. And why does he say that? And he explains. And they start confronting ideas, saying, but wait a second, why does he say this? Yes, one could say that, but why does he say that? They keep debating ideas, leading you down different paths, but in the end, there's no conclusion. They don't tell you who. In very few cases do they tell you which rabbi has the truth or which rabbi is the authority. This very rarely happens. And why? Because that's exactly what the Talmud is. That's exactly what the Torah is. It's about knowing how to debate. And if you notice, that's why Jews have been able to invent so many things in the world. I actually made a video about this recently. It's a technology invented by a Jew. The ballpoint pen was invented by a Jew. Wi-Fi was invented by a Jewish woman. The MP3 format. You hear me, thanks to a Jewish invention. We were sending emails that was invented by a Jew. Google through Gmail was invented by a Jew. And this video is being broadcast. I saw comments on Facebook. That's also a platform. Why? Because Jews, not because they're religious or not, or because they study the Talmud, but because we were taught from a young age that there are no frameworks that should trap your thinking. You can always think about what's beyond, and you always have to be open to criticism and always be open to the possibility that the other person might have the truth. Go with the truth, not with your ego. That quality, that's the point of the Talmud. Rabbis don't argue to see who is right. Rabbis argue to find where the truth is. And I think that's something that's really missing in the dialogues you mentioned between religions, in politics, and in all of these things, and what they call the culture war, right, left, and all that. Maybe also the progressives. And for me, I'm not a progressive, and there are many things I really dislike, but the idea of progressivism does have things that are true. And being a 100% conservative is also flawed. Humanity has already moved beyond many parameters, but who has the truth, this one or that one? Maybe it's a synthesis. These kinds of ideas are understood thanks to the dynamic that books like the Talmud have. So that's just a little taste of what Judaism is getting at.
Yes, yes, yes. Excellent, excellent. Hey, that was a synthesis, like you said, a synthesis of what all that is, and it was spectacular. Really, if someone wants to search, they have to dig a little deeper. I'd like to jump to a slightly spicier topic, and that's about the Messiah.